What's up, guys? Jeff here, and today we are in the back and it's kind of loud, and I'm sorry for that. This is Mad Hatter's Reef. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We're almost 60,000 subscribers strong. I feel like I'm really close to the camera. What's up, guys? Jeff here, Mad Hatter's Reef, and today we got a brand new video for you. We're going to be taking a look at the top 10 items that you need for quarantining your fish. And right now we're in the back room. This is where we do the quarantinings of the fish. Yes, I know I need to get up there and clean up that bad boy right there. But we got a lot of fish in here right now going through the quarantine process, and they're at different levels. Usually every fish to its own tank unless it gets shipped all together. We also got some live foods going on there. But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about the top 10 items needed for quarantining your fish. So let's jump into it. So kicking things off with number 10, and that is a vessel in which to hold water. Most often used in the aquarium trade is an aquarium. Go figure. Now, for me personally, when I am quarantining fish, I use typically two different sizes of aquariums. I use a 20-gallon high or a 40-gallon breeder, and that really depends on the species of fish in which you are quarantining. Now, your medium to small size definitely would be fine in a 20-gallon, and then your larger species like a tang, definitely more ideal to go towards that 40-gallon breeder. Now at the store, typically I'll use one of the two if I have a choice, but generally speaking, I'm going to use whatever I can get my hands on. Now, I have started using these tubs here. You can find these at Walmart pretty regularly. I think they are in the laundry section, and they're pretty inexpensive. They're probably $7 per container, and they hold about 17 to 20 gallons. So that's quite a bit of space for most fish that you're going to be acclimating. Generally, you're going to be able to find blue or black, and I've used both, and I found that the fish are a little bit more calm in the black container in comparison to the blue. So if you have a ability to have a choice, I definitely would go with the black. But I have definitely had success with using these black tubs, and they once again are not food grade, so that's something that you need to take into consideration with your fish. And I wouldn't recommend actually picking them up with a lot of water in them because they're not necessarily the strongest, but they are definitely an inexpensive option for quarantining fish. Coming in at number 9 on our top 10 items for quarantining fish is a aquarium heater. Go figure. Pretty important though, something to consider. Now, going back to them tubs, I have used heaters in them and they've held up just fine, so that is also something to consider. Now, for heaters, when it comes to quarantining, I don't necessarily go the titanium route. I usually feel okay with using a glass heater in that instance, and I have found that these AquaTop heaters are pretty reliable, and this is the most used quarantine heater at Corals Unlimited, both with freshwater quarantine, and saltwater quarantine. For saltwater corals and fish, I use titanium, but I have battle tested this heater and it works very, very well, and it is pretty inexpensive. But I will use this heater in a 10-gallon. I'll use it in a 20-gallon. I'll also use two of them in a 40-gallon. The reason being I'm going so big with these heaters, even though that they probably are generally used in a 50-gallon, is because I don't want to overwork the heater. They are technically a glass heater, which is most likely the form of heater that is going to fail you. But yet again, I've used this one a ton, and it has worked very, very well for me. And if you guys want to check out any of the products that we're talking about in this video, there's going to be links in the description below. Full disclosure, there is affiliate links and also links to my store. So if you want to help support this channel and get some pretty good stuff for quarantining your fish, check out those links. Coming in at number 8 on our top 10 quarantine items is a air pump. Now, the Tetra Whisper is a pretty solid air pump. I use this on my live foods as well as some of my hard to reach quarantine tanks. Now, I'm not just pumping air into the tanks for oxygen levels. I'm actually using this for the filtration of the quarantine tanks, which we'll get into a little bit further into this top 10. But I kind of wanted to get this as well as Airline Tubing out of the way, because you can't really have one without the other. Airline Tubing is pretty important when you're using an air pump, and I typically prefer the black Airline Tubing over the clear just because it doesn't get as nasty as the clear does. Eventually you have salt creep that's building up into it. You also can get some algae growth in there, and that's why I prefer the black over the clear. And I lumped them together because it doesn't really make any sense to be like, Airline Tubing is number 2 on our list. It made more sense to put these two items together. And coming in at number 7 is the sponge filter. Now, I've never really used sponge filters as much as I have in the last 6 or so months. I've used these in all of my freshwater tanks. I use them in my quarantine system, and they definitely are a very valuable form of aquarium filtration. And not only are they valuable, they're also inexpensive, and that's why they come in at number 7. And coming in at number 6 is also another form of filtration, and this one I use sparingly. I don't use it very often, and I'll get into that here in a second. But this is a old school corner filter, and typically how you use this is you have airline that connects to an air stone, drives water into, or air rather, drives air into the filter, and you have carbon at the bottom and filter floss at the top. Now, when I use this when I am trying to pull copper out of the aquarium. So part of the process of quarantining fish for me is utilizing copper, and then eventually I start reducing the amount of copper that is present in the aquarium, and that's where this filter comes into play. And coming in at number 5 in our top 10 items for quarantining fish is the security cave. Now, these are items that are not necessarily caves, but you can use the old school aquarium decorations. But quite often, I use these aquaponics baskets or pond baskets that you can find at Lowe's. I also use PVC couplings quite often, and I've even used the good old-fashioned corny aquarium decorations. Now, the idea behind this is to give the fish some type of area that they can go and hide and feel secure, and I've definitely found that it improves the overall health of the fish if they have an area like this within the quarantine tank. Doesn't take a whole lot, couple of bucks, pond basket, PVC coupling, something to give the fish somewhere to run to if it gets startled, or if it's being a little shy, or whatever you may be dealing with your fish. Coming in at number 4, probably one of the most important parts of my quarantine process, and that is Amco Plus. If you guys can remember back to when I was doing daily videos, I had a very hard time getting all the tanks to cycle. Now, I found through a bunch of research that if you don't have substrate in your aquarium, it can be very, very difficult to successfully cycle a tank. Now enters Amco Plus, and that essentially has removed cycling a tank from the equation, because what it does is it binds ammonia, NO2, and NO3 to the point where it is not toxic to fish. So you literally have the ability to take a tank, put a heater in it, put a sponge filter in it, get it up to temp, add fish to it, put Amco Plus in it, and they are going to be perfectly fine. The one thing that I would be concerned about with Amco Plus is it does lower oxygen levels, but if you are using a sponge filter that is putting oxygen back into the aquarium, you should be okay. I recommend using a half dose at first and then building your way up to a full dose. You don't want to just go willy-nilly and start chugging a bunch of Amquil into the aquarium. Do half dose, build your way up to it, and make sure you keep an eye on those oxygen levels, and you should be just fine. Definitely a absolute game changer product that has made the quarantine process tremendously easier for me. Now, coming in at number 3 is a product that I use to let me know when I need to add more Amco Plus, and that is Seachem's Ammonia Alert. Now, essentially what you do with this item is it's a little piece of plastic. You put it on the inside of your tank in the water, and as it starts to register ammonia, it actually, the little dot in the middle will start to change colors to other parts of the wheel, which you see yellow, gray, green, blue. Blue is bad, and I haven't gotten it to blue yet, but I do get somewhere in between the yellow and the gray, and that tells me that I need to start using more Amco Plus to get those levels right. And coming in at number 2, a product that has definitely changed the game for me in my quarantine process, and that is Safety Stop. Now, this is a 2-step process, and there's some really good videos out there, and I'm probably going to be doing one on my channel here in the near future. But this is essentially a system of medications that you can use for the introduction of fish, whether it be your main display or the quarantine. I would probably recommend using it in the quarantine system, because what you are doing is you're going to be treating the fish with methylene blue and also formalin. Now, these 2 products are definitely some of the best medications that you can use for treating fish during the quarantine process. And I've heard from a number of folks over the years that formalin is very hard to get. Well, it really isn't, because it's in Safety Stop and it's pretty accessible. And coming in at the number 1 spot on our top 10 items for the quarantine process is copper power.